ignoring the 4 globally acknowledged special forces truths, which are there for you to read. Now, this has happened actually quite erratically. At times, the colonel commandants of the parachute regiment have been able to convince the service chief to just expand and convert para-battalions into special forces. In fact, in one instant, 4 special forces battalion worth was created just in a period of 3 years, which is actually ridiculous because you dilute the manpower, the training, the combat capability. Post 2611, the NSG has also expanded many times, although Army has not been able to contribute much, specifically the officers. How do these special forces of the foreign countries expand? Post 9/11, it's very, very deliberate. In the US Army, expanded by 750. UK created a 650 strong SF support group. Pakistan added a 4th SSG unit only in recent years. And with 3 SSG units, they've been wreaking havoc in Afghanistan, in J&K, Bangladesh, Nepal. Now, when the requirement is more to operate below the threshold of war, it is actually prudent to maintain smaller nucleus of special forces and create irregular forces in support around them. We also have a peculiar situation in our army, which is unlike any other army, in that in our army, the special forces units and the para units are clubbed into the same regiment, that is the parachute regiment. So what happens is, at times you will find para officers who have not served in the special forces, either becoming the colonel commandant or holding positions of authority, where you are actually making recommendations for both the para and the special forces, and also arbitrating on certain issues. For example, in the current dispensation, there is a proposal that the role of the parachute battalions should be changed to independent small team actions, guerrilla warfare, sub-conventional operations in conventional scenario, and hostage rescue, etc., discounting their ground holding role. Now, that is an aberration. After all, the requirement of a para brigade and parachute battalions is undeniable. Now, who is going to do the role of the paras if the paras are going to start doing the role of the SF? I am bringing this out because these are the issues which come up periodically. And what happens is, in the bargain, the special forces concept gets sidetracked. Historically, Indian special forces have been used for direct action type of roles in conventional war. The hierarchical understanding of trans-border employment of special forces in India is short, distant, physical or direct type of actions executed on a unit-subunit basis to assist battlefield victories. There is no concept to utilize these special forces other than conventional war abroad, other than just one instance which General Leader have brought out in the morning, where the 3 special forces battalions were used as part of the IPKF in Sri Lanka. Other than this, the foreign employment has been under UN missions. And there again, India is the only army which is sending complete special forces battalions on UN missions and not employing them for surveillance in the areas of our strategic interests. What a shame that New York Times has to tell us that 13,000 Chinese are doing 14 projects in POK. SF should actually be central to our asymmetric response, which does not necessarily imply operating in unit, subunits, or for that matter, physical attack at all. A physical attack is only the extreme and potentially most dangerous expression of asymmetric war. The key lies in achieving strategic objectives through application of modest resources with the essential psychological component. What is Pakistan up to? I mentioned that the SSG has been operating in J&K, Afghanistan, Iraq, Nepal, and Bangladesh. In fact, the first SSG Havaldar was apprehended in Kupwara in 1995. The modus operandi is very clear. You get apprehended, you say, I'm retired and I become a jihadi. The SSG understands that special forces do not create resistance movements, but advise, train, and assist resistance movements already in existence. That is the difference. What about the Chinese special forces? Now, let me give you a brain teaser, which probably some people will laugh at the first go if you look at this slide. What is China up to? It uses the PLA in development of projects, including road construction. It is spearheading the massive cyber warfare program in China. They have established strategic footprints in Pakistan, POK, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. They're doing development of ports, development of roads, waterways, the works. In India, Chinese nationals have been caught with fake Indian PAN cards. Is this the tip of the iceberg? They have established links with the ULFA. There have been media reports earlier that China, the ULFA camps, which were earlier in Bhutan, have moved into Chinese territory. It is a different reason that for political reasons our government doesn't want to make any such statement. They have been establishing links with the NSCN and the Nepalese Maoists, and through them are Maoists. Now, if China aims to stir up NSCN, ULFA, and Maoist insurgencies while claiming Arunachal Pradesh, can we rule out covert involvement, including by proxy, and I repeat, by proxy, of the intelligence agencies and special forces? It's for you to take a call. Let's just briefly look at the undeclared tasks of the US Special Forces. Conduct proactive, sustained manhunting and disruption operations globally, build partner capacity in relevant ground, air, maritime capabilities in scores of countries, help generate persistent ground, air, and maritime surveillance and strike coverage over undergoverned areas, employ unconventional warfare against the state-sponsored terrorism and transnational terrorist groups globally. And nobody accuses the US of terrorism. Now let us look at the concept of employment of the Army Special Forces, which was instituted in 2001. It says special forces should be employed to continuously shape the battlefield. Now, when you say battlefield, it does not mean conventional battlefield alone. From conventional wars and nuclear backdrop to asymmetric and fourth-generation wars, their employment should be theater-specific and as force multipliers to complement tasks performed by conventional forces, entailing high-risk, high-gain missions having minimum visibility with desired effect. Their strategic tasking should be in sync with national security objectives. If you look at the general tasking, every conceivable task that you want to give to the special forces can be done under special operations, covert operations, or special missions. So what should the strategic employment be of our special forces? I would say continued surveillance of areas of strategic interest, continuous shaping of the battlefield. And when I say battlefield, it implies also the asymmetric battlefield, because the asymmetric war is not against the military alone, it's against the country. The control fault lines of adversaries and potential adversaries. We need to develop both publicized overt capabilities and deniable covert capabilities in order to create necessary deterrence. For this, both national will and military will are required. Our military special forces and the SFF should primarily be looking across the border to nip the roots of the asymmetric threats. It should be a matter of grave national concern to us that individuals like Masoor Azhar and Hafiz Saeed have open meetings in Pakistan with state support after having done so much of damage in our country. That China is fueling dissent in our northeast and in the Maoists with apparent intentions of preparing grounds for a full-fledged fourth-generation war in the Indian heartland. Now, where do you go from here? Lack of integration of the Indian SF has not been permitted optimization of their potent combat capabilities, including in creating a deterrent against irregular war. Our areas of strategic interest need to be kept under surveillance, including through human intelligence, to which the SF can be major contributors. There is a strong requirement of integrated Special Forces Command. Now, there can be many models. I've just listed out 3. The first is that you establish an integrated Special Forces Command under the CDS, a Chiefs of Staff Committee in interim with a Strategic Special Forces Cell, that is a SSFC in the Prime Minister's office. Model 2, establish the ISFC under or parallel to the existing Tri-Services Strategic Forces Command with SSFC in the PMO and Office of National Security Advisor. Model 3, establish ICFC directly under PMO with SSFC in Headquarter Integrated Defense Staff. Why should there be a cell in the Prime Minister's office? For the simple reason that any trans-border strategic employment will have to have his express sanction. Plus, this cell will be instrumental in evolving a national philosophy or the doctrine for employment of special forces. Now, the million-dollar question you will ask, if this concept is there, why has it not been executed? Many reasons. Firstly, despite 36 years of special forces being in India, we don't have a national policy for employment of special forces. There is no integrated joint structure. There is no institutionalized wherewithal to provide them real-time intelligence. There is hardly any joint training. And above all, most significantly, we don't have the political will and the national will and the military will. Some of the factors which could help developing the will that we're talking about. Appoint a Chief of Defense Staff, which was strongly recommended earlier. Effect true integration of headquarter IDS with the Ministry of Defense. Today it is a separate service headquarter. Create an institutionalized strategic thinking mechanism within Ministry of Defense, which is a void today, and National Security Advisor to have military background. Now, the void of this will has had other fallouts, and that is that 64 years after independence, we don't have a national security strategy. Your national security objectives have not been defined. What we are doing is we are barricading our own house. By doing that, it amounts to cowardice. And you get the label of being a soft state. So what are the options today? And if we are talking of cowardice, I would say that if Mahatma Gandhi was alive today, he would have said this. If one has to choose between cowardice and violence, I will choose violence. So our choices are very limited. Either go proactive in employment of special forces or continue bleeding. Thank you.
If you want to take this off, you can.
Okay. We don't need. Okay, sir. So I'll just put it down.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a lot has been said about the special forces since the morning. I can condense my presentation, therefore, very conveniently because I don't think there are much more that can be said on it. And if I condense this presentation, it would just mean one sentence, and that sums it all up, which says that the problem grows when you ask candle makers to invent electricity. And therefore, that is exactly what afflicts our endeavor. Now, let me go over what I had put across as a presentation for you. So whenever mankind has been locked in deadly conflict, contending war machines have realized that there is a need for doing a little more with their conventional forces at their command. This desire on the part of the conservative military mind to utilize unconventional space in order to achieve enhanced effects gave birth to a large number of wartime special forces organizations who exploited the intangible facets in warfare rather than the tangible areas for achieving success. The British SAS, the American OSS, the LRDG, Lawrence of Arabia, Israeli organizations during their War of Independence, and in the Indian context, the Meghdoot forces, are few of the examples of such impromptu raisings. Most of these organizations, as you would have guessed, were disbanded after the war culminated or conventionalized to the extent possible and retained more out of nostalgia and a hope for utilizing them in a future conflict. These forces were never nurtured to the point where they mirrored a challenge to the standard method of waging war. These seemingly ingratuitous action by the conventional war machinery, which benefited from SF achievements, has primarily resulted from the discomfort of the conventional mindset to face challenges to its primacy from an unconventional mindset. The challenges are severe to say the least. The British Air Force balked at the citation which the British Army forwarded for the award of a Distinguished Flying Cross to Major David Stirling, since he was responsible for destroying 350 German aircraft in North Africa. And then there is an example of the British commandos destroying the German heavy water facility in Norway during the Second World War, which has affected the geopolitical history of the world. The world would have been a different place had the Germans got the atomic bomb before the US did. Otto Skorzyny's rescue of Mussolini from a ski resort high up in the Italian Alps, where he was imprisoned, is yet another example of a strategic effect created by a few brave and determined men, all achieving results beyond a conventional military operating methodology. Similarly, closer home in our military assistance to Maldives, there was, in my opinion, no need to launch a military operation in the first instance. SF and CVs loaded in daily jumbo flights to Male would have placed the airfield in our hands, and air-transported operations could have followed. Para-brigade operations could have been planned as a backup to force the situation in case the SF operations failed due to any unforeseen reason. SF invariably presents a more cost-effective solution to our politico-military challenges in peacetime rather than the trans-border employment of conventional forces. Low-visibility operations are definitely more acceptable to the international community. The SF world has emerged as a no-hold-barred world defined by ends, not means approach, in direct contrast to how business is done in the rest of the armed forces, where means are just as important as ends. SF operations are necessarily small-scale ones, capable of creating large military and psychological impact. In order to achieve this, SF embodies very high degree of skill profile, with SF personnel usually being proficient in more than one skill. In order to bring to bear unbearable pressure at designated points of application, the organization has tremendous flexibility in attaching and detaching personnel and weaponry. Surprise coupled with high technology, extreme high IQ, and motivation all combine to produce shock action, which is the principal means with which the SF achieves results. Organizational help in terms of accurate intelligence and other kinetic assistance from other services and agencies help the SF in producing effects beyond the size of personnel deployed. SF personnel possess, like I said, enhanced awareness of technology, social, political, cultural aspects of target area. They are adept at understanding media and how perception is managed over communication networks, including social networks. SF personnel are pragmatic and do understand that success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. They are aware that stakes are high and that at the high end is exponential glory and at the low point is deniability of their existence by those who launched them, which would in some cases imply the nation itself. It is therefore true that SF survivability is the result of a complex set of factors, which include degree of organizational support, uniqueness of action, non-predictability and surprise. Lastly, a never-say-die attitude and the will to prevail under all circumstances. Now coming down to tasking. In my opinion, the desire to pin down SF to preordained tasks is a dangerous trend since it attempts to demystify the mysterious. This places the force under grave risk and also militates against successful accomplishment of the task. The anxiety of the conventional military mindset, which is comfortable dealing with tangible, is understandable. This seeming dichotomy between the employed and the employer can be reduced if the employers define the operating space geographically and functionally and structure the SF based on capability and thereafter leaving the SF to devise means to achieve desired ends. The contours of the operating space for the Indian SF from which the SF tasking, in my opinion, can be derived are, firstly, likely area of operations. The area where the SF can be employed in the Indian context are our area of influence first, India's territorial space and 30-kilometer belt beyond our borders on the continental shelf. This is the space in which India has traditionally sought to create operational as well as tactical effects. Then our EEZ and extending it to include coastal areas of our maritime neighbors in case inimical activity emanates from these shores against India.